Hi, Dima. Thank you so much for coming to BizTalk. How are you today?
Doing great, thank you.
Thank you to you. Thanks for coming. Before talking about your venture, shall we give an introduction to who you are?
Please. I'm originally from Ukraine, but lived all over, from Finland, Germany, United States, and I'm leading a startup of 10 people called Pandatron. Have background in management consulting. Previously had one exit from a startup, been doing Ph.D. On management and organization. So that's briefly about me.
Thank you. So let's jump to the business.
Sound good. Let me tell you about Pandatron. Essentially, we are helping corporations with change management. So whenever, especially people in older industries from manufacturing, construction, logistics, when they change the strategy of the company, they need to change the behavior, mindset, and culture of thousands of employees at scale, and that becomes quite a problem. McKinsey says that 70% of those change programs fail. And typically they use training, they use communication. None of them are very long-term, usually quite expensive. What we do is there's a methodology called business coaching, executive coaching, that is quite effective. There's a lot of research behind it, but traditionally it costs 150 euros, dollars per hour. So most companies can't really scale it. And so what we do is using AI. You might have heard of ChatGPT and generative AI lately. So using that technology to automate business coaching. So essentially it's a chatbot that coaches employees at scale. So suddenly you can give it to hundreds and thousands of employees. More than that, when we do that, we are able to see the patterns of the systemic issues in the organization, because an employee can come to us and be like, well, I'm struggling with X, but maybe it's just me. And we look at the big picture, we're like, it's not just you, it's half of your department is struggling with the same issue. So we anonymize that data, look for those patterns, extract those insights, and deliver that to the top management. And currently, we're at a stage where we've sold to a number of big companies like SAP, Skanska, Kone, Electrolux, and for a while, it was difficult for us to get into like bigger projects that wouldn't just be pilots of like 20, 30 people, but would be, 250 employees, 500 employees, 600, 3,000. And with the release of ChatGPT, that's actually exactly what happened, because the trust suddenly kind of went through the roof. And a lot of our clients kind of came back and they were like, hey, we're sorry for having been underestimating chatbots. How much would it cost? And kind of let's go. So that's partly also why we're raising the seed round right now, to mostly support the operations that would allow us to scale. And as you can imagine, scaling from 30 people project to 3,000 is quite a jump. We're raising a 2 million seed round, essentially support operations, hire top generative AI people, and then finally hire someone who is actually has experience with corporate sales, because traditionally I'm the one who talks to the senior executives. And it's not HR, so it's often head of transformation, head of change management, CIO, head of innovation. And I'm 28, but people told me that after I cut my hair, I look like I'm 18. And that doesn't help, with creating trust with the senior executives in corporations. I could mention some like metrics. I mean, we've done 150K in revenue total last year, but we expect that to jump quite significantly because of this kind of new sort of projects that we're exploring. So we expect to get to like 900K ARR by the end of the year. So also like a very significant jump. And we see quite high retention. So we've seen both, like when we measure the results, we could prove that it actually works and delivers the change that they're looking for on the behavioral level, but also we could see the results in terms of like retention of people. So we see that like 75% of the users usually stick around if we look at like half a year into the program. I guess I'll wrap it up here in terms of like my pitch, and let you ask more questions.
That's great. We are very much in time. Teaching skills and changing any kind of skill in workforce, it's absolutely complicated. It's very, very much complicated. You say, right? Many big corporations, they fail. many projects, they fail because of that. Now, you already have some traction. Where do you see the biggest problem coming from this corporation, where your software, your platform can help?
It's quite surprising because like when we talk to a lot of the clients, they're like, the biggest challenge is not the technology, it's the people. And what they mean specifically when we work with individuals, it's the fact that everyone is overwhelmed and they don't have clear priorities because they were already pretty overloaded before the change, and then the change is kind of on top of that. And there's conflicts in the workplace, right? Because someone used to have the power and they don't anymore. Or the structure changed, the team changed, and there's completely new kind of relationships at place now. Leadership, right? They need to explain to their team why this is important, and actually, lead by example and show that, hey, this is where we're going. Goal setting, right? So being clear, what are the priorities right now? What are the things that are important but not necessarily urgent, but still things that have to, get done? Well-being, right? So not forgetting on how you're performing overall. So this kind of like the whole spectrum of soft skills becomes super crucial in this moments. And that's essentially what we're seeing. And then I would add to that one more, which is that for the top management to see what's actually going on, because often with like so many layers of hierarchy, they're losing track of what actually the challenges are. And sometimes they're really easy to kind of take away, but they're kind of the systemic challenges that we just, didn't expect that a certain incentive would work a certain way. And then, it gets the whole system stuck.
So today, these corporation are using your service more for the software, the hard skills, and it's your platform ready for the hard, the teaching exactly. If, for example, I want to have a new project, this team is not ready, has not enough hard skills, is not knowledge enough. Can you do this as well?
So what we're essentially helping them with is primarily the soft skills, because that's what we see what is critical in change. But with hard skills, what we notice is that quite often the corporations already have a ton of e-learning material, a ton of training material, and it's more about kind of the desire to learn, the learning plan. It's kind of like everyone knows that they should go and exercise, but not everyone goes to the gym. And so what we can help them in the future with is kind of match them with a very specific content that they actually already have, to say, hey, okay, you have a goal in connection to becoming a better leader, very abstract, but nonetheless. And here's a training module that we actually have for you coming up in just a couple of weeks, and you can sign up here.
You're based in Helsinki, Finland. Where is your market?
It's mostly Western Europe, North America, which is also why I often travel to San Francisco these days. But yeah, most of the team is in Finland.
In terms of companies, actually, who are the companies that today are using your service, your main target?
Mostly this corporations that have more than 5,000 employees. And they tend to be in manufacturing, logistics, construction. So some examples would be like Electrolux, Skanska, Kone Cranes, sometimes also old technology companies like SAP that also go through a lot of changes.
I mean, chatbots can be very difficult, very much so. How did you make yours be so attractive where they don't give up? Many give up on chatbots, many.
I think the key is really relevance, right? Like understanding what does the person need. And then the other key is that coaching, I would say, is actually the easiest use case for chatbots, because many people try to kind of put content and advice and kind of training into it. But through that, it's very easy to be kind of boring and irrelevant. Versus with reflection, it's a lot more difficult to kind of, to say something quote unquote stupid. So for example, if I would say, hey, Max, you have to work harder, you would be like, Dima, maybe you don't know anything about me. Maybe I need to work smarter. Versus if I ask you a question like, hey, Max, what would make you more efficient in your work? That's less likely to be relevant. Like most likely, that reflection question could could be useful, could like prompt you into something. And so the way we build the product is that we have experts, coaches, psychologists, therapists writing the content. Then we have our own machine learning model that we developed on the data that we've been collecting for the past 3 years to classify the user challenges and give them the right content and the right time. And then we use the latest GPT technology for empathy. So we noticed that it's really important for people to be understood. So for example, if we ask them, how did you do as your goal? And someone is like, I, almost got fired, feeling terrible, then the bot would say, I'm sorry to hear that you're having a hard time at your job. And that actually was like a huge value to most of our users from what we've seen. And then in the end of the game, the experts come back and kind of act as a supervised learning mechanism where they read through the logs and see what could have been improved.
I mean, in terms of business model?
It's a SaaS, so it's a yearly subscription, and we charge per seat from $5 to $50 per month per person. 5 if it's 25,000 employees, which didn't happen yet, so hopefully soon. And then 50 if it's like a very tiny project.
I mean, what's the feedback from the companies? One thing is having the feedback, having the feedback from the users and translate it to the company. But what's the feedback from that?
So for example, with Skanska, who is one of our top clients, they said that they've achieved bigger behavior change in 2 months with AI coaching than they usually have done in 6 months. So that's kind of what one sort of feedback. And we have a bunch of references on the website with clients saying like, wow, this actually, helps us move the needle forward. And it's interesting how surprising as well it is for many.
Can you see other applications one day?
Oh yeah, for sure. Like we actually starting one project that I'm kind of personally doing because we can kind of do it pro bono. So we'll do like a 1 month coaching for students in Ukraine to support them with mental health. And we'll basically hire a Ukrainian coach, help to translate it, and there would be minimal work from our side. So we thought that, it would be a very nice thing to do. And so for sure, like one thing I'm thinking about is, potentially, let's say if we can provide a coach to essentially everyone, and then I wonder also whether the data that you can collect can actually drive policy even, where you could come to the government and say, hey, we see that there's a lot of unemployed people, but actually the thing they struggle with is not so much the skills, but self-confidence. And maybe you need to change the focus on the trainings from one to another.
Absolutely agree. This is completely right. Yeah, indeed. I do believe many people, they don't fail because they're not competent, because they are not enough confident.
And having data for that would be maybe that could help the needle.
Yeah, I do believe we should translate this data since the beginning when kids go to school and help them to build confidence. What's your vision? You're an entrepreneur.
I mean, I'm doing it all because I think there's a huge power in self-awareness. So initially for me, it also changed my life when I went to so-called leadership development seminars where they help you reflect on what you actually want, what's important to you, what are your values, what are your fears as well. And I think that we kind of underestimate that part in education where, again, we teach people skills, but we don't teach them how to be a human. We don't teach them emotional intelligence. And of course, coaching is not, an end all be all, especially like in a chatbot form, but I think it could move a needle on emotional intelligence and general like strategic thinking, reflection on priorities. Of course, you would still need some sort of embodied work, for example, and work with your body. So it's not everything, but I think it could help us to become to become more mature people, essentially. And that's the vision. If we have more mature people in the world, more mature leaders, I think that we would also have less challenges and less problems.
Indeed, I mean, it's completely. Again, confidence does a lot.
Yeah,
it's nothing to do. I met so many people in my life. I met people extremely intelligent, not enough confident to try. I met people I don't want to say not intelligent, but not to that level, or with a lot of confidence. And they succeed. And this is what I always say to all the guys I mentor. You must be confident. You need to build your ego in somehow. Yes, everyone must be humble, but you must be also very confident. Otherwise, you can't go because difficulties are simply too many to overcome, especially when you're an entrepreneur. Now, you're fundraising right now, and
Yep.
to be your round. My question is, where do you go with this round? Do you want to? You already say a bit about, but it's a scale-up round, or it's a round for more technology?
Both, right? So essentially, we found ourselves now in the place where demand is not as much as a problem as delivery, and so in many ways it is delivery, but also it's working with this clients and working on this huge deals also requires the stakeholder management there and project management, and the goal is to get to the first big paid projects where it's more than 1,000 employees, so we can fully say, hey, it's not just a pilot, but we actually changing the way change management is done actually, and sort of prove that we can completely move the needle in terms of how it's done and what the success rate is, and kind of build really confident sort of stance that will then allow us to expand further.
Let me ask you, what makes you not sleeping at night? What do you fear?
Good question. I think essentially just that this won't happen or will happen in a bad way. Like, I think one thing that there's always a danger with technology, right? You can use it for good and you can use it for bad. And I think rather than I guess I will be more happy if someone else does it and does it well than if no one does it, or if we do it, but let's say the data we collect would be misused, right? So we often care and think about like the data privacy there. And I think that that's like super important how we kind of treat that, and that this reports that the clients use, that they don't become kind of a source of surveillance, but rather a source of like intelligence for the organization and connecting with the people on the ground in a safe manner.
Let me close. Do you have a message for investors? Why, in a very short sentence, they should invest in yourself, your team, or your startup?
I mean, our team is actually very good, particularly for this idea, because we combine expertise from consulting, startups, VC, psychology, coaching, AI, NLP. But even more importantly, I think you should invest because this is a combination of something that can create a huge impact in the world just by the nature of making people more self-aware and more mature, but also something where we actually found a business model where there's a huge problem with big budgets, namely change management, that we can use as a kind of go-to-market before scaling further. So that's my message. And thank you.
Dima, thank you so much for coming to BizTalk. It's been a very great pleasure, and I really wish you the best. I hope you in equity management. We do our best. Thank you so much. Take care. Bye.
Bye-bye.